North Korea stands alone as the only country on Earth where leaving without government permission is considered treason, punishable by lengthy imprisonment in hard labor camps or even execution. Even moving between provinces within North Korea requires official documentation and permits, making the country a prison for its own citizens. Universally regarded as having the worst human rights record on the planet, North Korea forces all men into a minimum 10-year military service, and all media is state-controlled. As recently as 2017, Amnesty International estimated 200,000 political prisoners were held in camps across the country. Subjected to slave labor, torture, and summary executions, not counting non-political prisoners. The regime's cruelty extends to collective punishment. You can be sentenced to life in prison merely for being related to someone who committed a crime. In one infamous case revealed by the U.S. State Department, a 2-year-old child was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2009. After authorities found his parents with a Bible, foreign contraband illegally smuggled into the country. All foreign media has been strictly outlawed for decades, with penalties ranging up to life imprisonment and death for smuggling, distributing, or consuming outside content. North Korea remains one of only 4 countries, alongside Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Somalia, that routinely carries out public executions. Foreign access is extremely limited, with visitors under constant surveillance and only shown carefully curated tours. Sometimes visitors pay with their lives, like Otto Warmbier, an American tourist arrested in 2016 for allegedly attempting to steal a propaganda poster. Sentenced to 15 years of hard labor, he was returned to the United States over a year later in a vegetative state.
Please save my life.
And died days later. All of this has made North Korea the most isolated and secretive country in the contemporary world. The most difficult to get anything or anyone into or out of. For decades, the Kim dynasty has worked tirelessly to transform North Korea into a de facto island, completely separated from the outside world. Geography already provided natural barriers. The Sea of Japan to the east and Yellow Sea to the west make maritime escape incredibly challenging. As boats are scarce and the North Korean Navy maintains constant coastal patrols. South Korea is the primary destination for defectors, not only because it's vastly wealthier and more developed, but because the South Korean government considers all Koreans their citizens, including North Korea's 25 million residents. Any North Korean reaching South Korea automatically becomes a South Korean citizen. Of the defectors who've successfully escaped since the 1990s, 34,000 made it to South Korea, compared to only around 1,000 in Europe and 200 in the United States. However, reaching South Korea directly is nearly impossible due to the demilitarized zone, ironically the most heavily militarized border in the world. This fortress stretches coast to coast with tens of thousands of troops on both sides, patrolling walls, fortifications, and barbed wire, plus around 2 million landmines. North Korean border guards have shoot-to-kill orders for anyone attempting to cross. 750,000 North Korean soldiers are deployed within 100 kilometers of the northern DMZ. Facing 450,000 South Korean soldiers, plus 20,000 American troops on the southern side, breaking through this imposing obstacle has always been extremely dangerous, which is why very few have ever succeeded. Historically, the comparatively easier, though still extremely difficult, escape route was across the northern border into China or Russia. This was also the primary smuggling route for contraband entering North Korea. North Korea maintains an official military alliance with China, and while relations have often been strained, they lack the outright hostility of the southern border. With minimal invasion risk from China, North Korea never needed to deploy hundreds of thousands of soldiers here. Similarly, the tiny 17-kilometer border with Russia, where relations are also relatively warm, never required heavy military presence. Most importantly, North Korea's border with China is massive, stretching over 1,300 kilometers as it follows the Yalu and Tumen rivers through rugged mountains and sparsely populated forests. For most of North Korea's history, this long northern border was lightly patrolled and relatively porous, making it fairly easy to smuggle both goods and people across. This was especially true during winter months when the rivers freeze over, allowing defectors and smugglers to simply walk across, or during summer when low water levels made wading across easy. But there was a major problem. Once across the border, defectors still weren't safe. Both Russia and China have extradition agreements with North Korea, treating defectors as illegal immigrants rather than refugees and deporting them back to North Korea, where they face immediate imprisonment or execution. For nearly every defector who escaped into China or Russia, the goal wasn't to stay, but to eventually reach a neighboring safe country. Precious few existed. Myanmar and Laos were out because they also immediately deport North Korean defectors back. This left only Mongolia, Thailand, or Vietnam as nearby safe havens. Since South Korea considers all North Koreans their citizens, these three countries deport any North Korean defectors they catch to South Korea instead. So the plan was always to cross the porous, mountainous border into China, then gradually make their way to Mongolia, Thailand, or Vietnam, where they would surrender to local authorities and get deported by plane to safety and a new life in South Korea. Defections only truly spiked in the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, eliminating North Korea's primary financial supporter. With their main benefactor gone and heavy sanctions imposed by the United States, Japan, and South Korea, North Korea's economy and agriculture became unsustainable. With little money and barely any ability to import farming equipment or fertilizer, food imports from the Soviet Union gone, exacerbating droughts and floods, and less than 20% of their land considered arable. North Korea couldn't acquire enough food to sustain its population. The worst famine in the country's history followed. Due to North Korea's incredible secrecy, nobody knows exactly how devastating the 1990s famine was. But estimates range from 300,000 deaths on the lower end to 3.5 million on the higher end. Across just 4 years between 1994 and 1998, with masses desperate to escape the famine, defections spiked. Sensing opportunity, entrepreneurial smugglers arose, smuggling in needed items like food and medicine, but also illicit contraband, like Western and South Korean movies, TV shows, and books. By the early 2000s, thousands of North Koreans were successfully defecting annually, with the vast majority escaping across the northern border into China, eventually making their way to Thailand, Vietnam, or Mongolia to be deported to South Korea. Defections steadily increased year after year, long after the Great Famine ended, reaching a peak in 2009 when 2,914 North Koreans successfully reached South Korea, the largest number to defect in a single year since the Korean War in the 1950s. Defections remained high in 2010 and 2011, with over 2,000 each year. But then, at the end of 2011, something changed. Kim Jong-un's crackdown. In December 2011, North Korea's supreme leader since 1994 suddenly died, and his son Kim Jong-un succeeded him. Since taking power, Kim Jong-un has worked tirelessly to crack down on both defections and smuggling. Signal jammers were installed across northern frontiers and remote mountain passes to block foreign cell and satellite signals. Intelligence monitoring of phone calls in northern areas increased while more border fences were built, and patrols intensified. Things were changing in Russia and China too. In 2014, Russia signed an agreement with North Korea to begin deporting any defectors they caught, essentially eliminating Russia as a viable escape route once and for all. Meanwhile, China began developing its massive surveillance state apparatus. After passing the PRC cybersecurity law in 2016, within just 4 years by 2020, China had likely increased its surveillance cameras to over 620 million, more than 12 times the number operating across the entire United States. To compensate for increased risk levels, brokers and human traffickers in China who helped North Korean defectors escape began charging more and more money. In 2007, the average price a broker would charge to help a North Korean defector escape to Thailand or Vietnam was around $2,000. A lot of money for the average North Korean, but theoretically doable. By 2012, shortly after Kim Jong-un took power, the price had doubled to around $4,000. By 2015, prices had doubled again to about $8,000. By 2017, prices ranged anywhere from $13,000 to $16,000 per defector. Beginning in 2020, the ability to escape from North Korea became even more bleak. In January 2020, only 2 months after the first reported COVID-19 case in China, North Korea became the first country in the world to completely shut down and seal all borders, citing its desire to keep the virus out at all costs. Basically, all travel into and out of the country was shut down. Every international flight was immediately canceled, and nearly all foreign trade with the outside world was halted. North Korea only reported its first confirmed case on May 12th. And just 3 months later in August, the regime had already self-declared victory over eradicating it, with only 74 officially reported COVID-related deaths. But the reality was almost certainly worse. Anonymous doctors and sources reporting to the BBC claimed about 1 in 550 people in Pyongyang actually died from COVID during that 2022 outbreak. In August 2020, the regime established so-called buffer zones on their northern borders with China and Russia, with firm orders given to North Korean soldiers patrolling the borders to unconditionally shoot anybody on sight. Attempting to either enter or leave without permission, a shoot-to-kill order that evidently remains in force more than 3 years later. Moreover, the North Korean regime seized on COVID-19 protection as an excuse to construct vast new fortifications across the borders with China and Russia. Satellite imagery has revealed hundreds of kilometers of newly constructed walls, fences, barbed wire, and guard posts along North Korea's northern border since the pandemic began, seemingly sealing off nearly all historical mountain passes and routes that defectors and smugglers had used for decades. The once porous northern border has become mostly solid, and hardly anything or anyone is crossing it now. But building vast new fortifications with strict shoot-to-kill orders isn't the only way the regime has made it increasingly impossible for any of its 25 million subjects to escape. Much harsher restrictions have been placed on domestic travel within the country, meaning North Koreans need proper authorization and paperwork simply to travel from province to province. And if caught without them, it's straight to one of the country's many prison camps. In December 2020, the North Korean regime passed a new law called the Reactionary Ideology and Culture Rejection Act, which heavily criminalizes receiving any information or object from the outside world, and bans anyone from possessing a non-government sanctioned cell phone. Under this new law, smuggling and distributing foreign videos or books can be punished by public execution. Even simply being caught watching a foreign video or reading a foreign book can be punished with a 10-year hard labor prison sentence. Historically, foreign films and shows like South Korean K-dramas or dubbed American movies were smuggled from China across the northern border on micro SD cards, then sold and watched in secret. But since the extremely harsh new laws were passed at the end of 2020, and the northern border became much more heavily sealed, these smuggled foreign films have virtually stopped entirely. Defections have virtually ground to a halt since the pandemic began. In 2020, there were only 229 successful defections to South Korea, a tenth of what was seen just a decade earlier. 2021 and 2022 saw even fewer, with only 63 and 67 successful defection attempts respectively, the lowest levels in North Korea's entire history as a state since 1948. So far in 2023, the trend continues. The entire first quarter between January and March, some of the best months to escape when northern rivers are frozen, recorded only 34 successful defections. This compares to thousands of successful defections annually in the early 2000s and 2010s. North Korea has, in effect, become the largest and possibly most successful prison in all of human history since 2020. But it isn't just new laws and northern border fortifications contributing to this. They're merely components of Kim Jong-un's grand concept of transforming North Korea into a truly closed digital state. wherein both the digital and physical realms within North Korea are completely isolated and separated from the rest of the world. This has been a long-time project in the making. The phones you can get in North Korea work very differently than what you're used to. State-sanctioned phones from North Korean companies are the only ones you can legally possess. They can't connect to the internet and can't make international calls outside North Korea. Moreover, they have state-sanctioned software installed that cannot be removed, which disables all foreign files, apps, clips, and text or sound files not created on North Korea's state-owned operating system called Red Star. These phones will also continually and randomly take screenshots of messages and activity history that cannot be deleted. And phone inspections by North Korean police are mandatory. In essence, these phones are only usable within North Korea and only in ways the regime deems acceptable. But foreign-made phones smuggled across the northern border were always problematic to the Kim regime's desire for this truly closed digital state. Foreign phones could actually make calls to the outside world and contain foreign-made files like videos, text, and sound. They were big business for entrepreneurial smugglers because using a foreign phone might be the only way a family could contact a relative who had attempted escape. The only way to know if your relative was alive or dead. Many North Korean families would save enormous amounts of money to meet these smugglers for the chance at a phone call to the outside, or to view or read something from beyond their borders. But no longer. By slamming shut the border and increasing law harshness, the North Korean regime has probably destroyed the smuggling process, undermining its closed digital state ambition once and for all. As risks for getting defectors out have increased, so have broker prices. As of 2021, the average price Chinese brokers were charging had increased to more than $21,000 per defector, a full 10 times increase from as recently as 2007. After North Korea became extremely sealed off in 2020, the regime also began refusing all North Korean defectors caught across the border in China from being returned, officially citing fears they might bring COVID-19 back into the country. There may currently be as many as 1,000 North Korean defectors held in prisons within China near the border, waiting to be sent back to the Kim regime when they finally accept them, where they will almost certainly be sent to prisons or executed. But there's no certainty how much longer North Korea will remain even more isolated than ever before. It could all be the new normal state of affairs for the elusive regime. Those 1,000 defectors sitting in China may be trapped in limbo for a very long time. And the 25 million people remaining within North Korea may as well be stuck within a completely separate universe from now on. The black hole on the world map that North Korea has become since 2020 has made it effectively impossible for nearly anyone within to get out, or for anything from outside to get in. Aided by North Korea's unique geography and the Kim regime's ruthless application of laws, fortifications, and new digital technology, everything from the outside world has been blocked out. North Korea stands today as humanity's most complete experiment in total isolation. A hermit kingdom that has achieved what no other nation in modern history has managed: the complete severing of an entire population from the rest of human civilization. But here's what haunts me about this story. What happens next? Those 25 million people, mothers, fathers, children, dreamers, are now living in what might be the most sophisticated prison ever constructed. Not just walls and guards, but a digital cage that monitors their every move, every word, every thought they dare to express. The world watches from the outside, but we're not just observers. Every day that passes, every month that Kim Jong-un's grip tightens, every new law passed and every new wall built, we're witnessing the slow suffocation of an entire nation's hope. The story of North Korea isn't just about one country's isolation. It's about what happens when we allow fear to triumph over freedom. When we accept that some people are simply expendable in the pursuit of power. Every successful defector who made it to freedom had to risk everything, their life, their family, their future, just for the chance to be free. And now, even that chance has been taken away. As we sit here in our freedom, able to watch whatever we want, say whatever we think, go wherever we choose. We must remember, 25 million people don't have that luxury. They may never have that luxury again. What do you think? Is there hope for North Korea's people, or has the Hermit Kingdom finally succeeded in its ultimate goal of complete isolation? Let me know in the comments below.